She won most talkative in high school, and she has been running her mouth ever since. Welcome to the Lisa Fischer Said Podcast with your host, Lisa Fischer.
Okay, so here we go. You're going to tell us again, what were your modalities and what did you use to get healed?
You know, I have a document, like I said, that's an 83-page document that literally lays out everything that I've done in my cancer treatment. And so it basically lays out the philosophy by how I approach cancer care, that cancer is a metabolic disease, is based on mitochondrial dysfunction, to people that were inspirations to me, to all the supplements and modalities that I've used. And so I did have surgery. I opted out of chemo and radiation. I'm not against those who do that, but I believe no matter if you go the conventional route or an alternative route, you need to support the body's ability to heal. And you need to make sure that you can clear out the mitochondria, normalize the health of the cell to allow the toxins to get out, the nutrients to get in. And so that's really how we approached care. And I did go to Cancun and do what's called a dendritic cell vaccine, where they took the tumor they extracted from me.
Wow.
And when I was in Cancun, they actually took plasma from me and they combined it to create dendritic cells, which will actually go and scavenge my body for any remaining cancer cells and kill them, or look for any future cancer cells and kill it as well. And so there's nothing synthetic in it. It's all my tissue. But it's amazing where cancer research has come, the new things that are available right now. They offer the same thing at MD Anderson, but you had to go through chemo and radiation first. It really had to fail. And it was probably like $600,000 out of pocket. And for me, it was easier to go to Cancun. And so, you know, it's interesting because someone prophesied over my family 13 years ago that God would use me to marry medicine and the natural. And
here we are.
And here we are. And I thought it was 13 years ago, not ever assuming that it would be now or that I'd have to walk through what I've walked through. But honestly, I consider it a huge honor.
Well, so I'm a health coach here and I have clients all over. And when they go to their provider and say, you know what, I'm going to opt out, unsubscribe from the chemo and radiation, they'll say, well, there's the door. Mm-hmm. And we're not going to take care of you. So do you have to have a provider then to write anything you need?
You know, I'm a kind of big advocate that you just need to make sure you have a good team around you that supports, whether it's family and so forth. Because the people that go after it alone, my heart breaks for them. And so I feel very fortunate that I was able to reach out to some of my colleagues and who are great friends of mine, Dr. Josh Axe, who's one of my relatives, Jordan Rubin, who's one of my best friends, and to be able to just walk through this journey with them, which was just hugely beneficial. And I think, you know, the biggest thing I find from a lot of doctors is that their hands are tied typically. Yes. And they have to follow conventional medicine and standard of care. And if they don't, it's easier to play ignorant when it comes to diet, because when I play ignorance, then I'm not really held accountable. But if they don't play ignorant, then what happens is if they instruct someone to do a certain diet and it fails, they can lose their license. And so their hands are tied. And it's unfortunate because when they come to me, then when the oncologists and family members come to me, they throw everything out the window and they approach it very, very differently. And so when your life is on the line, you go all in. You have to if you're going to beat this thing. And so, but for me, in my 25 years of practice, I've never told one person vaccinate, don't vaccinate, do chemo, radiation, don't do it. Their choice. It's their choice. My job is to empower you where you find peace in your life and approach it there and then say, let's fight together from this place.
That's a great way to put that.
Because you can't live by my faith and I can't. So that's right. I have to go, and there's a rest for the people of God when they live by faith. And so where do you have conviction right now in regards to how you want to approach it? And then let me meet you there and let's fight together.
All right. Well, then let's talk about some of the tenets that I've seen time and time again, just with my clients. And again, I'm just a small little, pebble here in this big ocean of information and what's available. And obviously, I've interviewed Tom Seyfried and talked to so many people, and I am a faster about cancer being a metabolic disease and glucose and glutamine being two of the things that feed the cell. Did you incorporate fasting, and were you already familiar with fasting as an adjunct for cancer at that point? I figured you were.
Yeah. I think too, approaching cancer, knowing that it's a metabolic disease, knowing that cancer is very adaptable. So if it's not going to get glucose as a source, it's going to go after glutamine. And so it's really making sure that, for me, I've lived a fasted lifestyle. I've done a lot of extended fasts. I've done intermittent fasting for years and years and years. But I think there's nothing that helps more, in my opinion, when it comes to normalizing blood sugar levels and normalizing glutamine than a water fast, a 1 day, a 3 day water fast. I've heard it said that if there's a gentleman that I follow that said if I had cancer, they would do a 7 day water fast, and it's the first thing they would do.
Yeah.
I think even if someone's approaching chemo and radiation, I think doing a fast of 24 hours before as well as 24 hours afterwards, I think is just even will help the chemo work more effectively. And so there's a lot to be said about the new research that's coming out when it comes to fasting and getting the body into ketosis. I think it's just such a more effective way, because it's hard for some people to get into ketosis, especially if they're on medication, especially if they're doing some conventional treatments. It's very hard for a person to just reach that state of ketosis where the body really starves cancer cells.
And it has a lot to do with the D word, diet. I mean, if they have diets high in what the government recommends is your recommended daily allowance, you're carb drunk. I mean, it's too much carbohydrates really for our body, and our ancestors, I don't think ever designed us to eat that way. So I just interviewed a lady last week. She's in Portland, Oregon, or outside of Portland, and she's an MD who's left traditional medicine. And either by the time this airs, her episode may have aired. Katie Deming, Deming. I want you to look her up. It was maybe a radiation oncologist or something. She was in the cancer world treating it, and she left it 2 years ago.
Wow.
And I asked her, I said, what do you tell people to do if there's a cancer diagnosis? And she said unequivocally, a 30-day water fast.
Wow.
And I went, whoa. I said, what about 10 day? What about 5? She said, well, I'm telling you, I have a couple of clients. I couldn't go past the 14 days because of something in life. But she said, when you do a 30-day water fast, that tumor growth, I mean, it dissipates. It starves it. And she said some people can't do it because they're really too thin, depending on your weight. Some people can't manage. But if we're coming from the position, Dr. Pete, that it's a metabolic disorder, and we know that 92% of the people are metabolically unfit or have risk factors for metabolic conditions, most people in the U.S. or in the West would be candidates to fast a long time, which is very challenging. The longest I've ever done is 5 days. What's the longest you've ever done?
Well, I did a 21-day, I would say, juice fast, not water, because, you had the glucose there with it. But I think I've done a 7-day water fast. I used to do a lot of 21-day Daniel fasts.
Yeah.
I've done, but probably a 7-day water fast is what I've done.
That's long. That's substantial.
And I just talked to a gentleman who has brain cancer, who tried to do a 3-day water fast, and in about 2.5 days had a seizure. And that was more because of just the inflammation and the body kind of going into a stress response. And so I think it's just, no matter who you are, just navigating that journey, starting off slow, and then just making sure you have the support system. And I think it's funny to me that most doctors will tell you that diet means nothing when it comes to cancer treatment, yet they will give you a PET scan that fills you with radiographic glucose that will light up that cancer, yet there's no correlation that diet has anything to do with cancer, which is completely absurd, because just simple, common sense would tell you that, hey, my PET scan's lighting up because of the radiographic glucose. Hey, something obviously has to be said for diet and sugar and everything else.
Then what's your position on the constant scannings, the constant radiation risks that we have, that you then have as a follow-up? What are you going to do to continue your journey? Because in a conventional system, you'd be in and out of your cancer center every 3 months.
Yeah. And I think it's making sure that when it comes to the scans, that you might have to have or desire to have, making sure, one, you can open up the detoxification pathways, that you can support the body to cellular level, do some fasting in there. I do a lot of coffee enemas, to be honest with you, because I want to protect my liver. And I didn't even do chemo radiation, but making sure you protect your liver and your kidneys. And so there's milk thistle is a great way to kind of help detoxify the liver. And so there's other things that you can do. For me, they want me to do an MRI. You know, the desire is every 3 months. And so they want me to do it with contrast. But I think too, approaching it, whether I do that often, whether I do contrast that often, it's just making sure that you do what you have peace with. And my thing for anybody when I'm consulting anyone is, hey, only do what you have peace with. Good. There's no concern with being still or taking a step back, but do not take a step forward when you feel yoked by the burdens of this life or your decisions. And so seek counsel, seek the presence of God. Make sure there's a rest for the people of God. And if you feel yoked by it, then go boldly into the throne of grace, obtain grace and mercy. You know, he says, I'll give you grace and mercy in a time of need, but go and get the perspective of heaven before you make those decisions that would carry a yoke with them.
Well, let's talk about some of the things on your social media that have caught my eye. One of them I've done some reading into, but I really want to hear your take on it. And it's the magic of 100 milligrams melatonin every day.
Yeah. So I just actually posted that not too long ago. And, you know, that seems absurd to me, even me personally. And so I even created a sleep supplement and I took melatonin out of it because my concern was that we didn't want the pineal gland to downregulate its ability to create melatonin.
Right.
But that's actually, you know, when you look at the new research, that's actually not true at all. In fact, melatonin is considered the nighttime vitamin. If vitamin D is the daytime sunlight vitamin, then melatonin is the nighttime vitamin. And what it will do for the brain and just in bringing oxygen and oxygenating the cells is pretty remarkable. So the new research out there, I personally take 120 milligrams every single night of melatonin, and I have my wife doing the same thing just because it's
prophylactically, you think?
Yeah. And it's so great when it comes to cognitive functioning, and so I do 120 milligrams every single night.
Because when I have done it, like when I've had COVID, because I get COVID about every year, I mean, whether I want to or not. And so I know during a viral period for me, I'll try to get up that high. But I mean, I'm in there looking for a bottle. The most I've ever seen is 12 milligrams. So I'm counting out. I guess I would count out 10. I mean, what's the highest milligram? So
I have on Amazon, honestly, I got an organic melatonin. I actually have it on my cancer protocol. There's a link on Amazon, but I just a little capsule and it's 120 milligrams. Mm-hmm.
And does the liver then finally get to the point where you're not so sleepy with it that you can kind of process it?
Yeah. So that's kind of a myth, to be honest with you. So melatonin is just so beneficial. I think there's other things that would make you sleepy. I don't really think melatonin helps you get into the deep REM cycle sleep in the second phase of it, which is where the first half of REM sleep is where the body organizes the emotions and memories. And then the second half is where it begins in its restorative state. Most people, in fact, research has proven that if you're on an antidepressant, it will actually inhibit you from getting into even the first level of REM sleep, which is very detrimental to a person's physiology. And so we want to make sure that we can get the body into not just the first half, but the second half of REM sleep where the body will restore itself. And so melatonin will actually help you get into that REM sleep and that good, deep, restful sleep. And I will tell you this, that, you know, coming off this cancer diagnosis, I feel better than I've ever felt in my whole life. And I was healthy, what I considered healthy before. I haven't had a symptom, don't have sinus issues, don't have headaches. Like, it's incredible. My sleep, I need about 6 hours of sleep a night, maybe 7, maybe 8 if I just lying there but I really don't need it. God has really touched my life, and I'm so, so grateful.
Have you talked to Dr. Seyfried about this? Because part of his research was done with glioblastoma, it seems like. He's the PhD metabolic researcher from Boston University who kind of has the anybody who's listening, they're Otto Warburg approach about it being a metabolic disease, which is in contrast to what Western medicine says. They say it's a genetic disorder. So, but glioblastoma is like one of his favorites, I think.
Yeah. And I haven't talked to him. I actually talk about him in my protocol. He's an inspiration to me. That's the philosophy. Him and Dr. Otto Warburg.
Right.
I do love some of the work from Max Gerson from the Gerson therapy, but I don't do the juicing part because I want to stay in a ketosis because of, and so,
yes,
but I do the coffee enemas so I can detoxify my liver. They're all inspiration. I never met him before. I'd be honored to meet him sometime.
Well, I can tell you this, you're starting your podcast. It's called Becoming Resilient. And by the time we drop this may be in June, you'll probably have dropped that, your new podcast. But Dr. Seyfried, I reached out to him, and I'm telling you, Dr. Pete, within an hour, he replied and said, of course, I'd love to be on your podcast.
Wow.
I went to his Instagram
amazing.
page. He might be, is he in his 70s or up? Like late 70s.
I think so, yeah.
Sharp as a tack.
He's brilliant. Yeah, he really is.
And humble. Because what I told him was, I said, there's a target on your back because you're making people that make a lot of money mad. And he really deflects any attention about himself and says, this is just information. This is just science that I've gathered up from Dr. Otto Warburg from 100 years ago. And he just said he started putting it together. So that Katie Deming that I talked to, the one thing she says that I think is interesting that does go against Dr. Alan Goldhammer, who I've interviewed. He's got I think it's called True North Fasting Center or something. There are a couple of these fasting facilities, but when in the refeed, they're often vegetarians. So in the refeed, it's a high glucose dose, and she doesn't do that. So she says, I think because if we talk about glucose and glutamine, you're kind of poking the bear. Those are my words. That's not what she said, but that was her philosophy was, I don't know if that's a great idea. So what is your position then on incorporating juicing? Because we know juicing has a high glucose load and that's what feeds cancer.
I think if you look at people like Chris Wark and Chris Beat Cancer, and he's a big advocate of juicing and the antioxidants, and he's really kind of steers away from a ketogenic diet for those with brain cancer. But I think for me, when I look at the research, when I look at cancer being a metabolic disease, what it basically uses for fuel, for me, I have stayed away from a lot of the juicing just because of what you said. I don't want to get out of ketosis. I want to make sure, and cancer is very adaptable. And so I used to take a glutamine supplement because it's great for a leaky gut.
I know.
But my encouragement is probably don't take a glutamine supplement if you're dealing with cancer. I think it's great for a leaky gut, but for me, it's just cycling your proteins. I love, a carnivore diet. I love grass-fed, grass-finished.
You're from Minnesota. You love a good cow.
Like you have
Come on.
to. Yeah, that's
Jeez,
just all we know is farmland.
Right.
Yeah. And so I think it's just approaching it that way and honestly doing what you have peace with. I think it's easy for someone to say, do this, do that when they've never gone through it. It's another thing when you're you're in the midst of the fire, battling for your life and knowing that you just have to go all in. And the people that actually beat this, they have to go all in. So whether it's conventional, whether it's alternative, it's just, hey, diet is significant. Cancer is a metabolic disease. Now, people say to me, well, my mom had cancer and I got cancer, and so it has to be genetic. Well, genetics might load the gun, so to speak, but only your lifestyle pulls the trigger. And so let's be honest, 99% of cancers are metabolic. They're based on lifestyle choices. And so I think what happens is we basically say, no, it's genetic, and then we play the victim card and we can do whatever we want and pay no attention to what it means to steward over the temple of God, the greatest gift that we've been given in this life. If I want to run and not grow weary, walk and not faint, if I want to finish well, I have to steward the gifts on my life, my relationships, my finances, especially my health. And when I steward them, it means I honor them. And when I honor something, I partake in the fruit of it. And so that's very, very important for me.
Okay, so remind me what's glutamine in and how do I avoid it?
Glutamine is an amino acid. It's in protein, and so it's necessary for the Krebs cycle. It's very, very beneficial. We need glutamine. We need those good amino acids, and so. But knowing that cancer is very adaptable, if it can't get it from glucose, if it will get it from glutamine, it will probably even look at different sources of fats. But I'm just making sure you're cleaning out your diet, making sure that you're stewarding well the temple of God.
So where are you on ivermectin, fenbendazole, mebendazole, those things?
I use it. If you talk to most cancer oncologists, they'll tell you that cancer isn't parasitic. But if you talk to ones that do the research, they'll actually tell you it can absolutely be parasitic. And I've been around the world 25 times. And so I've been in India and Venezuela and in Argentina and everywhere under the sun. And so I think just for that alone, and when you look at the research on parasites, so I use ivermectin, mebendazole. I'm actually a big proponent of some of the natural ways to fight parasites like wormwood, black walnut, pumpkin seeds, and so forth. But no, I like all of that. And you are willing to do anything when you get diagnosed with something like this.
You were saying places all over the world. Look, I've been to the Ozarks. I've been to a pasture in the Ozarks. Yeah. I was raised in Southeast Arkansas and went into farm, where the cattle had been. No telling what's there. I'm on day 29 of an ivermectin 30-day protocol my husband and I are doing. So it's now our governor, Sarah Sanders, signed into the legislation that we can now get it
that's good.
Over the counter. But we got it right before that happened. And I've done, she's, I forget what her Instagram name is, Rogers, Darren can help me, but she's the lady that does she does an anti-parasite, Kim Rogers, Worm Queen. Yeah. I've done her protocol as well. And so she has wormwood, pumpkin seed, and all these things in it. And Darren and I both, I don't remember if Darren, my producer, ended up doing it, but I did it, and it was like 3 weeks. And it has a little GI distress to it. It's a little disruptive, but she thinks that everyone should do it once a year. And, a lot of people aren't bored with that. So
no, I agree. And I think the biggest thing, though, is just making sure you're protecting your liver, your kidneys, doing, milk thistle, doing ways to detoxify. For me, it's coffee enemas, it's making sure you stay hydrated. Saunas are great. I love hyperbaric chambers, ozone saunas. I love PMF. I love red light therapy. And a lot of those things, for a lot of people, they just don't have the resources. Unfortunately, they'll pay for cancer, conventional care all day long. The insurance companies will. But, when it comes to some of the alternative treatments, there's no money there. And so, I hear it all the time.
I know. I hate hearing that. My one client who boldly went back to her oncologist when it looked like she had metastasis in her liver, and she started fasting. And they're the ones who told her, there's the door, when she said, look what I'm going to do. And they went, well, we're not going to treat you. We're not going to help you. There's the door. She wanted vitamin C therapy, and she was going to have, like, my nurse practitioner who does my bioidentical hormones, because she could write it, but it was like $1,600 or $2,000 a month out of pocket. And she said that's just cost prohibitive. So she did some other things, and that's what I hate, that those people are standing by their convictions and they get penalized financially. Okay, here's my new thing for 2024 and 2025. I'm obsessed, and that is with quantum biology and light. And that all this junk light and blue light that we're under, I've got my blue light blocking glasses. I put on it. As the sun sets, I'm outside several times a day. I'm not worried about skin cancer. I used to run from the sun because I wanted to keep porcelain skin. And now I realize I've been lied to. Where are you on that big ball of fire in the sky?
I agree. And, it's interesting. So, a place that I go into Atlanta, we're looking at creating a holistic cancer support center where we're bringing in the modalities and the IV therapies and everything else like that. And one of the IVs we're looking at bringing in is photodynamic light. And so basically pumping light in the IVs and also ozone. And it's just fascinating when you look at the research of what it will do for the cells. And so I'm a big proponent of that. I actually talked to a dermatologist probably 10 years ago, way before I was diagnosed. And he just said, Dr. Pete, the sun causes cancer and this and that and this and that. And so you want to protect yourself. And I just basically called him out and I said, no offense, sir, but look at this. This is the research. And he just sat there and he actually started to tear up. And he said, for 35 years, I've actually approached it this way. And he said, and just to be able to work with him and just work together and say, okay, let's figure out a way that we can just look at research, get understanding, not be closed off to some of these things. It's just to empower people on their journey is one of the greatest privileges, and to allow them to just finish well and know that you might be a small little piece of them just of transforming their life.
Also on your social media, something else, if we want to start a fire here, and you had something about Ozempic. You had the Ozempic warnings they don't tell you about. Let's talk about that.
I think, when you look at just the long-term effects of Ozempic, a lot of them, they're not even studied yet. And so it's going to come out 10 years from now. But I think when you look at these medications that they're coming out with right now and what it does to the body, and it's going to become a balloon effect. And so if you ever stop, you're going to balloon up, unfortunately. And so you're going to have to be on it for the rest of your life. And when you look at the cancer risk and how it affects the DNA and how it affects blood sugar and everything else, it's just not something, if you approach it in a natural way. I just think, there's other ways to lose weight, and which are safer ways to lose weight, and through high intensity interval training, through diet, through exercise, through
sunlight,
fasting, through sunlight. There's so many ways that you can do that. And you have to understand that fats is actual organ in the body. And fat's there to actually grab toxins and protect the rest of the body from. So one of the greatest ways to lose weight is actually to go on to begin to detoxify. And so you can do that through hydration. Half your body's weight in ounces of fluid a day of pure water is a great way to flush out the cells. There's other ways to do a cellular detox, to do a heavy metal detox. I mean, all fat is doing is trying to protect your body and your organs. And so to detoxify the body is a great way to lose weight the right way.
And truthfully, as we age, because this is kind of Dr. Gabriel Lyon talks about muscle being the organ of longevity, that's the compromise about Ozempic that worries me, is the muscle loss that people have. And people in nursing homes are often there, not necessarily because of cognitive decline, but it's because little ladies can't get out of the chair.
Yeah. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah. And she's thinking, but I got skinny in my 60s because I took Ozempic. And I think, well, shoot, was the trade-off worth it? And again, I feel like that about anything. That's why I don't want the government telling me what to do on what shots to take.
Yeah.
If people are presented with all the facts and they choose to do it, that's on them. Then I can sleep at night.
I think the biggest thing for me, though, is don't play the victim when you're basically, someone tells you what to do, you take it, and there's you don't count the cost before you do it. So as long as you're willing to count the cost, by all means, go for it. But don't play the victim when you don't count the cost in advance.
Yeah, I wish there was really a full disclosure on all sides here, that when someone saw a traditional Western medical provider, that the provider said, I'm getting compensated somehow, or I'm being incentivized, or especially with the vaccine schedule, that we could understand. And then I do think people will say, well, I got a little brochure, that said black box warning, but nobody reads it. I just wish there was more transparency on the side of patients. I'm a chronic Googler. I'm a journalist, so I'm always curious. That's just my personality, but some people aren't. They'd rather not know. They go, I don't care. I've lost 35 pounds. I don't care what it does. Yeah. And so I go, well, I don't know if you really want to say that. But again, as long as everybody, we know what we're dealing with.
And that's so true. And so, I've never walked in someone else's shoes.
Right.
And so I'm not there to judge them. I'm just there to say, hey, empower yourself with information, or let me meet you where you're at, where you have peace, and let's fight from that position. And let's go and just begin to make incremental lifestyle changes and habit changes and see what God does.
Have you been acquainted with cancer fighter? Now he's cancer thriver, Owen himself.
Yeah, so I was on his podcast not too long ago. And so he's great. Become a great brother and doing amazing things.
That may be where I first heard of you, because I've had him on a couple of times, and he's so bold in the way he discusses his cancer treatment and how he was a pawn in their game. And I love some of the things he says. One thing is how they always say it's a rare cancer. He said they said that to everybody. Yeah. And he's the one who says, don't do all the scans, don't do all the, just. But one thing he does kind of talk about, and I would like to know your opinion. So do you have a tray of 1,000 supplements you take every day? Or
No, I do have supplements that are listed in the protocol that research backs. But I think for me, I actually have a program that I created for my wife, like I said, that actually we do blood work, and it actually compounds. I have to do it in Canada because I can't find anyone in America that will do it. And so they'll actually compound a supplement based on blood work, based on lab results, incorporate any DNA mutations as well as food sensitivities, and we create a compound supplement for them. And then we create a meal plan and set them up with a nutritionist. I did it for my wife because I couldn't, there's so many gaps in other programs. So I created one for my wife, and it transformed her life, transformed her hormones and digestion and everything else. And then I started allowing patients that came to me from around the world with cancer and MS and Parkinson's. And I just had a lady the other day that said, Dr. Pete, I lost 73 pounds in 4 months. She goes, I went from a 22 size to a 12, got off my medications. I have another lady who basically went from, was on thyroid medication for 20 years, got off her thyroid medication, her thyroid now works. And I had another lady from Missouri who had breast cancer, and the oncologist said, I don't know what's going on, but the tumors are actually become hollow. You don't have cancer anymore. And so that's one of the things that I've done, because then I know that I'm getting, based on nutrient deficiencies, based on DNA, based on food sensitivities, I know that I'm providing my body with the supplementation it needs. I have a meal plan that, even though I'm on a ketogenic diet, it incorporates the foods that I'm sensitive to, so I eliminate any severe sensitivities, moderate sensitivities, and I create a meal plan based on mild and no sensitivities. And so I can approach it in health very, very strategically and personalized. And where all, healthcare is going is personalization. And so that's, for us, has been a game changer. And, that's one of the things that I'm a big, big advocate of, is personalizing not only your supplements, but making sure it's based on good information and lab results. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, tell me, how do we get in touch with you for that?
So I think if someone goes to my Instagram, Dr. Pete Sulack, and just puts protocol in one of the comments, then they'll get a download, and there'll be a link to have a one-on-one consult with me. And in that one-on-one consult, like I said, I'm booked out quite a bit, but you can meet with my son. But from there, it will allow you, and that's one of the things that I address. We just find, okay, with what you're dealing with, what's the best approach? And so we try to be very unbiased when it comes to, let's approach this. And so approach it based on your resources, approach it based on what would be most effective, where you can get the biggest bang for your buck. And typically, it's with this Be Resilient program, because it's 9 months. You have a nutritionist assigned to you. You have personalized supplements based on your biochemistry. So we're not just throwing a bunch of supplements at you and hoping they work. It's everyone's unique. No one's the same. And that's what my wife came to me and says, hey, that's great, but I really want to make sure that I have, that it's personalized to what I need. Mm-hmm.
Are you seeing patients in your office anymore, or have you retired from a traditional chiropractic model?
I really do mostly consults. I have a doctor that's there right now. We're really working on this concept to create this holistic cancer center that can support, no matter where you are in your journey, can support you with modalities and different things. And I'd like to bring on an integrative oncologist and nurse practitioners and RNs, and really just begin to support people's journey and just serve them where they're at. Mm-hmm.
That's great. I hope you never retire.
Thank you. Yeah. And I don't plan on retiring. I want to use my life to glorify the Lord. And I feel like He's given me a gift, the fact that I'm alive today. And so I'm going to use it for Him.
Yeah. It's an amazing story. People, you need to follow him on his social media. All that will be in the show notes. His podcast will drop in a couple of months. By the time we air this, it'll probably be that month. Becoming Resilient. Dr. Pete Sulack, thank you for being here. Thanks for doing this.
Bless you. Thank you so much. It was an honor.
Thanks for listening to the Lisa Fischer Said Podcast. Be sure to hit subscribe and download all the episodes and leave a review, won't you? The Lisa Fischer Said Podcast is produced by ClantonCreative.com.